Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Professionals on the Grind, where we share honest self talk career advice with driven individuals. And today we have Dr. Stephanie Lemus. So let's start off with you telling us where you're from and what your current position and or affiliations that you're proud of.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such an honor to be with you in this virtual space. Again, my name is Dr. Stephanie Lemus. I am Salvadoran American. I'm Central American, and I come from a community called Pico-Union, Westlake, which is just down the street from downtown LA. And I am currently a full-time tenure-track professor at Orange Coast College in ethnic studies. My specialization is in Central American studies, and additional affiliations that I have are connected to the Central American community and to Central American studies as well. So I serve on the board of historical Central American organizations like El Rescate, and I'm also on the board of associations that focus on the Latin American studies section, but again, specifically in Central American studies for the international association called LASA, Latin American Studies Association. So I'm very proud to be able to be here with you and share my story with you and others who will watch this and listen to this.
I love it. Thank you so much. So, I always like to start with a few background questions, which will really give us perspective on your upbringing and what shapes your mindset and your career path. So, to start, what generation professional are you? And can you give us some background details on what your parents did? Did they have corporate jobs? Did they have, working class jobs? What's their highest level of education? And what was your upbringing like as a first generation professional? And how did you view your work or what your career goals were based on what your parents did?
That's a great question. My parents did the service type jobs when they first came to this country. My mom did a lot of domestic work, has been a domestic worker for now, I would say 20 something years. My dad, started off working in an auto shop and did so many different types of service jobs, then getting into the trucking industry. And so, definitely very working class family. My parents met in Los Angeles when they were teenagers who were fleeing Central America, and they did not complete their education. My mother only got to 10th grade. My dad didn't attend school here in the US. He only went up to 6th grade in El Salvador. And so definitely that was a key value. Even though my parents had not had access to education, there was this very very valuable lesson from their own experience that they wanted me to learn, that they understood that education and access to education was something that they didn't have for many reasons, and that would be a key component of my success in the future and the vehicle from where I could have upward social mobility, especially financial mobility, where I could break out of this working class. And so I am a first generation professional. And although my parents were not in professional careers, my parents really instilled in me a strong work ethic that is
Mhm.
very much, part of Latino culture. And they gave me the foundation to be a first generation professional, but then I had a lack of different tools and skill sets that are required in formal jobs and professional jobs that I learned along the way from the different jobs that I had myself,
Mhm.
whether they were in service, whether they were in the community,
Yeah.
whether they were in academia. And so being a first generation professional that lacks all of these type of capita in terms of the professional world,
Mhm.
you definitely will undergo a learning journey as you develop in the roles that you are in. And so, again, I'm thankful for my experiences and just being able to humbly accept, opportunities for growth, failure as a process of learning as well, and just being able to identify and voice what I felt I lacked in terms of like skills, and being able to be vulnerable with my bosses and be like, hey, I don't know how to publicly speak that well, or I don't know how to make points for when I'm, doing a conference. And so being able to be vulnerable, have an open mindset as a first generation professional was, has been very important.
Did you ever hit a point when you started your career? And we'll get into education and really deep dive in a bit. But I knew I was a first generation professional and student when I went from going to school in inner city South Central Los Angeles to UCR to Castellet to Northridge, right? Like it just kind of hits you. Did you have a moment when you started your career path, your education path, where you knew, oh, there's drastic differences and the community needs improvement? But for you, did you ever experience that?
Absolutely. I think because my parents, again, were in non-professional roles, very much needed, right? Very much dignified jobs that my parents held, and jobs that are needed to,
Mhm.
for others to do their jobs, for the society to work. But I quickly realized that part of the skills that I needed to learn and was confronted with is not only getting to work, doing your job, punching in, being on time, being obedient, but then also like the creativity, right, of like problem solving,
Mhm.
in terms of like things that may be abstract, being able to manage, right, and how it is to be in a role that requires you to manage others. So not just being like you go there and you do a job and you kind of, once you're out, but really being able to serve as a coach and as a leader in a microcosm to others, um, and also feeling comfortable in offering ideas, right? Because again, often in the roles that our parents did, they didn't have much
Mhm.
room for creativity or to offer insights or to offer alternatives of how to do things, right? They're just there to do their job and kind of make sure it gets done and then leave. And so feeling uncomfortable to get comfortable to doing
Mhm.
those things was very much the learning process of rethinking what I do in a job.
Yeah.
And I think that that is so important, something that is not talked about, because it requires more of you in a different way that we didn't learn from our parents, besides trabaja, go to work, make sure you look
Yeah.
spiffy, that you brush your hair, you brush your teeth, and then you get it done, right? And so all these others around, like more, the freedom, the creativity, the problem solving outside of, maybe like physical labor or other types of like problem solving, that are more abstract or more, long term, etc. I
Right.
think that that was very challenging, and I had to learn.
Right. I think, in talking to you and getting to know you, you really mentioned, you were kind of inspired and checked by your parents. Like early on, I think all Latinos, they have to be the translators, the lawyer at 8 years old, doctor, translator. Could you tell us about, the impact you had being a first generation immigrant, child of an immigrant, first generation, you know, and being the eldest of three, right? Like, could you
Yeah.
share how that kind of shaped you?
It was so impactful, Diana, because as the first child to an immigrant family where language is a barrier, where navigating systems is a barrier, they pridefully see that being born in this country or being raised in this country, knowing the language, being within the educational system, right, the system of
Right.
education here in the United States, that already puts you at another level. And so it became an unspoken responsibility for me as the eldest and as a child of immigrants to be able to take the leadership, for lack of a better word, to be able to lead my parents in translating and being able to explain things, but at the same time, within unknowingly being parentified
Yeah.
and having to kind of support them as a child in terms of navigating systems, etc. It also meant that I knew, and that was a signal to me that moving forward I really had to take ownership of my own trajectory, meaning, they expected me, you're going to school, you're going to figure it out, right? You know the language. So that means that you can figure out how to get to college. You're going to figure out how to get a job. You're going to figure out how to be the successful story that we expect you to be. And
Yeah.
that could be very daunting for different types of people, different experiences, different scenarios where maybe you're expected to, that also means that you're expected to work, to help around the house, to take
Mhm.
your abuelita to, your grandma to health appointments. Like I was expected to support the family in many different ways because my parents were working
Right.
and my parents were not around as much as they wanted to be. That meant that I had to cook and take care of my siblings and have all these added responsibilities that our reality as part of being as part of being of a working class family, immigrant family that is facing all different types of institutional challenges, not navigating systems, but also the challenges that come at the community level, at the macro. I'm sorry, at the micro level within the family structure, and so it was like you're gonna do it. We don't know how you're gonna do it, but it's the expectation que,
Yeah.
as I said, you're gonna do it, and so it is this thing like you cannot expect your parents to come and help you through applications or to tell you what school to go to. You're kind of navigating yourself
Right.
because it's expected from you.
You're filling out FAFSA by yourself. You're, looking for the SAT prep courses by yourself,
Yes.
right? They're
Yeah.
just, oh, why do you have a seat? Like, just come home with A's. That's it, right? That's the expectation.
That's your job. That's
Yeah,
what they said. It's your only job, right? It's tu trabajo.
right.
It's to go to school and figure it out and be successful.
Well, hold on. I'm raising your kids. I'm cooking your dinner. Like, it's not my only job to go to school. But there is a bit of a disconnect between our parents and their expectations and the reality, right? I also had parentification, and it's just interesting to see. Like, it's a cultural thing, right? You just kind of do it. You're expected to do it, and you do it.
I think because of my parents, just again, I think I can't remember how many times, school and education was part of that. We need you to do this. We need you to be focused. I believe that they just assume that the system kind of takes care of you, right?
Mhm.
Because they are so not acquainted or weren't able to really be involved because my parents were got divorced, and my mom was a single mom, and so she was always working, and so that meant that I really had to be independent in many ways, including in figuring out how I was going to go to college. And so I think early on, because I'm the eldest of three, I kind of was always like, I just have to figure it out. And when I
Yeah.
come to my mother or my parents, it's not to ask for help, but really be like, oh, this is how it works. And so a lot of immigrant children, within the Western view, is we're parentified, right? We are
Yeah.
expected to support our parents in translations of documents, right? Even important documents. And I learned that very early on, so much so that when my cat is just, it's like she knows I am on a Zoom and she's just like hovering
all right.
all
She's
over
like,
my,
it's the weekend. What are you
like,
doing on camera?
okay, baby. And so I'm so sorry. And early on we get those signals that we're supposed to show up for a parent, right? And so I'll give you an example. My grandma had cancer. She had bladder cancer when I was about 9 or 10. And I remember that my dad took me to the hospital to translate between the nurse and my family. And I remember that I I didn't understand a word and I didn't translate it correctly. And my father got so angry with me and he said, "What are you doing? Like, aren't you going to school? Like, aren't you learning English?
Yeah.
Like, what is, this is your responsibility." And that in itself just had like a really big impact on me, and me being able to just absorb that and say, I need to get it right. I need to get it right because my parents and my family depend on me knowing, right, this language that is such a barrier for them. And so to answer your question, they just expected me to be able to work the system, navigate the system that they couldn't navigate themselves. And that was based on, me going to school here, me knowing the language. And so it almost seemed like those two tools were the ones that were just going to kind of magically take me
Right.
to this journey of higher ed. And so because of that, I just made sure that I, got all the help that I could in school. Was it, whether it was, whether it was, going to the college center, taking, SAT prep classes that were subsidized because, I was low income, and, I was able to take, a subsidized course to prep for the SATs. I feel so, I feel so old saying that, right?
Okay.
But and so it was kind of like, Stephanie will figure it out. And right. That was like la confianza and la fe, right? The faith that my family had that I was going to figure it out, and I did.
And that's so important to note, because sometimes you don't have that help and you do have to figure it out by yourself. And I can only imagine the pressure, the stress, and the fear of failure, right? Because you're like, am I doing this right? I have to make it. There is no other option. And that kind of segues me into my next question, where obviously our parents want us to do better than they did. Did they stress, hey, you're going to go to school and you're going to make money, so become a doctor or a lawyer? Or did they just want you to move forward and figure it out and have a better life, and they were open to you choosing that?
I think there was a lot of confusion, not only for them, but for me, in terms of, okay, you go and get an undergraduate degree, and then somehow you end up in the career, and you're like,
you're buying a house.
Yeah, you're buying a house, and you're living the American dream. Of course, an American dream that is so hard to attain now, right? With a lot of things, very social, politically, economically, and more. But I didn't know myself exactly what I was going to do. I remember, telling my students a couple of days ago, I changed my degree several times because I didn't quite, kind of feel I was landing where I had to land in terms of what I wanted to do for my career. And so I'm actually grateful that I took those first 2 years of, general requirements to explore and just really take different courses that allowed me to be like, okay, this is what I'm interested in. And then create the kind of community, with other peers, with professors, um, and the different organizations in school that, or institutions in school that allow me to be like, okay, I definitely want to be in leadership. I definitely care about social justice. Education, of course, a big theme and of importance to me personally, but it just became even more so. I would say apparent during my college years and my undergrad years. And so between changing majors, between kind of creating that sense of community in school, which I believe was a privilege in itself,
Right.
I said, aha, I want to do community work, but I want to do community work that is tied specifically, with education, whether it was educating community members out in the streets, whether it was like creating classes in different Central American organizations that would empower folks to become citizens, so ESL and naturalization classes, to then higher ed. And so this um, this idea that I could be in two spaces in the community and also in the classroom setting was something that really was, it became important to me. And okay, I love doing these two things, right? Bridging community,
Mhm.
bridging students to higher ed, but also being within the higher ed space. And with my first opportunity to teach a what is called a SI, a supplemental instruction course with the
Mhm.
Central American Studies Department at Northridge, I said, aha, this is what I want to do. I love this. It's such a amazing feeling, to be able to not only transfer knowledge to others, but have an exchange where you create a safe a safe learning environment, and a learning environment that um, also mirrors people's experience, specifically when we're talking about Central American studies.
I love that. Let's deep dive into that because I think when a lot of people first go to school, they think I have to pick a major, I'm stressed, and you just kind of walk us through that journey. So, right out of high school, did you have a major and then once you got to college you said, "Ooh, I don't know if I like this. Let me now start to do that major tour and take classes everywhere."
Yeah, I went in to Cal State Northridge, so Go Matadors, as a psychology major, which is highly impacted at that school and other schools. But it was through the Equal Opportunity Program, so EOP. So shout out to EOP at CSUN, who have done great work for decades and continue to do so. And so that was the first. So before I even started college, I did what is called a summer bridge program, which is where you get acquainted with the campus over the summer. You get to meet other students from marginalized backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds as yourself. And that is when I'm introduced to ethnic studies, and specifically through a lot of the leaders who even first created ethnic studies at CSUN, and that was definitely very impactful in terms of like, okay, I'm in the right place. There's a place here that recognizes that my experience is, I'm not alone in terms of being a feeling, like there's a lot of things against me in terms of being in this space, but then these people understand that I need extra help and they're here to help. And so going in as a psychology major, I quickly realized that that wasn't really something that I really wanted to pursue. And it was taking a general requirement in anthropology where I was like, oh my God, I love this. I love learning about culture. I love learning about how the environment, also impacts culture, nature versus nurture, and being able to understand the human condition, right? Humans through physical anthropology, archaeology, cultural anthropology, and more. And so I specifically started taking more classes in cultural anthropology. And I realized that I really was looking to understand myself. I was really looking to understand what I always felt was different about me as we think about Latinidad, right, in the
Mhm.
United States, where Central Americans are kind of like other identities are absorbed under this identity of Latinidad,
Right.
which really doesn't mean much that beyond, that we come from a region, or this other term Hispanic that just means that you come from a Spanish culturally practicing country, specifically focused on the language of Spanish. And so I knew that I had um, a rich traditional and historical background, being specifically from El Salvador and not being, for example, from Mexico, or being Puerto Rican, or being Cuban or Dominican, which are the other groups that are, that formulate the densest Latino groups in the United States. And so, by chance, I took also for a requirement this class called the Salvadoran Experience. It's Central American Studies 102, the Salvadoran Experience. And that was my aha moment. That is where I was able to thread my own experience within this academic, presentation of why migration, right? Why political, economic, and social destabilization in the Central American region, understanding the role of the US, within specifically my family's story of migration in the 80s, where US intervention, played a key role in the turmoil that was going to Central America. And so that moment finally set in as, okay, I have a sense of belonging. I understand my history more. Now, what can I do about it so others have the same chance? At the time, Central American Studies at CSUN was not only the only um, at CSUN was not only the only institution with Central American Studies in the nation, in the world,
Wow.
but it was the only program. And so that privilege for me did not, I say in Spanish, I don't know,
Say it.
I
Yeah, you're
es,
good.
no era como, like, I didn't take it for granted, right? I knew that that was something special that I had access to because of being at CSUN and because taking this class. And so from then on, I started becoming involved with the program student organization that,
Yeah.
so which was CAUSA, the Central American United Student Association. And a lot of the work was doing community work that was in the different classes that I took, that started making sense from our fieldwork class. So, volunteering at different Central American organizations in Los Angeles, to, the Central American Revolutionaries class, understanding the movements in Central America, to the changing roles of women in Central America. And so all those classes gave me a little, gave me back a little piece of me and my family. And so I remember at the time, a lot of us were like, we have to become professors. We have to be able to expand Central American studies. And, CSUN cannot, be the only one. We need to go out to the world and make sure that we are making connections with students who may not feel seen or may not feel heard, because, it is now, no, now 20 years later after I graduated, there's more Central American studies in high schools, and,
Right.
at Cal State LA, with with classes there in a minor at UCLA. Now they offer classes at UCLA, and with professionals like myself and other my peers who now within ethnic studies, right, teach Central American studies, which was not something that, it's still something that I think it's an issue, and
Right.
where my dissertation focused on. But being able to have the opportunity to explore, being able to say, hey, I changed my mind and it's okay, really creating a sense of community, and knowing that that community, my mentors and my peers, we all, they all supported me in this decision of, hey, I want to be a professor, but also a community leader. I now have access to Central American organizations where I can volunteer my time. And I also have my professors who are mentors and
Mhm.
who saw that in me and said, yes, go to grad school, and you can do it. And so I feel very privileged and just honored that I was able to not only, kind of like serendipity fall into it, but also that I was able to create that system and a system that supported me back, which is so important.
It's very important. And I'd love to hear more about, it sounds like you had a very strong determination to go straight into education, which is great. A lot of people aren't lucky enough to know, hey, this is my career path. This is what I'm doing. Let's move forward. So you chose to go straight to your master's right after your BA and then your
Mhm.
doctoral, right? So can you give guidance to people? Like, how did you navigate that? Did you have a job? Like, was it an easy decision? Do you recommend people get their master's? Do you feel, obviously you're going to say yes, you're in education, is it worth it? But people are in their careers thinking, oh, should I go back to school?
Mhm.
What's your guidance?
So it's never late for education. No matter what type of investment in your educational career that you want to make, whether it's starting out with community college, going back to get your master's, getting that credential, whatever it is, when you invest in yourself, you never lose. And that's in whatever you do in life, but especially education. And so there's no, I would say, right time or clear path for anyone. It's just when you make that decision to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's easier said than done, but I know that as I was navigating all of these different majors, because I didn't also mention then I so I changed my major into anthropology. I take Pan African Studies as a also, while I took other requirements. Pan African Studies. I started taking Pan African Studies to fulfill my some of my general requirements, and then I was like, oh my god, I want to like triple major. I want to do anthropology. I want to do Central American Studies. I
Yeah.
want to do Pan African Studies. And so I added Pan African Studies as a minor, and then I double majored in Central American Studies. And so
Wow.
that gave me what I believe is just such a wealth of frameworks to operate from, not only in the community but also academically. When we talk about ethnic studies, most people are like are specialists, and I am too, in one area. But because of my minor in Pan African Studies, I was able to also be very keen to um, how Black communities, right, in Latin America have faced a lot of discrimination, and also a
Right.
lot of, I would say, marginalizing of them, even in academia, when it comes to who is Latino. Afro Latinidad and
Mhm.
Black Latinos are often not not only in academia but also in lesser degrees, but also uh, oh my God, I want to go into history, but also within the disciplines of, let's say like Chicano studies or Central American studies, we still have to fight to be able to also visibilize those communities because of, the history of racism and the homogenization of Latinidad within Latino
Mhm.
countries that often doesn't recognize a Black identity, a Black presence, a Black history. And so when I took those classes in Pan African studies, so, the studies of the diasporas of African communities, Black communities in the world, I was like, okay, this is important too. And so then I graduate with two majors and a minor, and I'm like, okay, let's go to get my master's. And a few of my professors had gone to Cal State LA to earn their master's in Latin American studies, and because again of their mentorship, I knew that that was the program for me. And so I think it's very important when you're looking for a master's where you're going to specialize now, right? The undergrad degree, it's, general, I say general specialization in
Right,
an
right.
area. But once you get into your master's, you're really, honing in on what you want to, specialize in. And so I knew that our professors, a few of them had gone to Cal State LA to the Latin American Studies program.
Go to Eagles! By the way,
So go
Stephanie and I,
Eagles!
we're double alumnus. I
Yeah.
went to undergrad at Cal State LA. You did your master's there, and then we did a reverse. I did my master's at Northridge. You did your undergrad there.
Yeah.
Shout out to the CSUs that sometimes get
Yeah.
overlooked, but they're the ones leading our communities and really
Absolutely.
helping us progress forward. So before I know I cut you off, but
It's okay.
I'd like to really get into people understanding, right? Because I think you have such an amazing intertwined education and professional career path. So to understand how you actually got there, how did you first find your network, right? It sounds like you were mentored by your professor. So somebody else that wants to get into education and they're currently already done with school, they're getting their master's, their first line of network, it sounds like it's your professors. So you don't seem like a shy person at all. If someone is shy, like how does someone start to connect with their professors? Sometimes it's intimidating, sometimes they seem mean. How did you navigate that, especially knowing I want to get into education? Let me connect with the people that I need to connect to.
I think that's a great question because I think to be a mentor, you have to be willing to be one, right? Even though you probably may have wonderful professors who are just amazing, but for whatever reason, right? They don't have the
People skill.
time or just what have you to be able to mentor you. I think it's a skill that you kind of have to develop in terms of really being able to kind of hear keywords, right? Are these professors the ones that are saying, hey, connecting you to different events at school, or that are able to bring in different perspectives by bringing in different lectures or experts in the field. There has to be some type of identification of this mentor that is not only okay, they're willing to mentor you, but also I think that mirrors where in your career you want to end up in. A lot of professors are not just in academia, they are
Mhm.
working as advisors in government or as advisors in other capacities because of their expertise. And so, and this connects to something else I was going to say is that when you're looking at a program, it's really important to see the professors and their specialization, right? Just kind of like
Mhm.
when you're looking at uh, I would say when you're looking at resumes or when you're
Yeah.
looking at prospective jobs, there's all these, well, they've done this or this is required, etc. it's really important for you to look at the background of your professors to see, well, where did they go to school, right? What did they do their research on? What are some of the institutions that they're tied to? Maybe they serve, for example, I serve in the Latin American Studies Association, which is a international association with 6,000 members, and I serve on the board of the Central American Studies section, right? And so that's very specific. And so someone who wants to go into Central American Studies, should reach out to me. And because I'm always like, hey, reach out to me, if you have questions.
Right.
And so looking at the department and their faculty and their experience and what they specialize is important, I think, as a first step. And then being able to identify, like, okay, this person seems like, like they're open to mentorship, utilizing office hours. I think office hours are so underutilized. I would say that is an opportunity for you really to get to know your professors on a more in depth, right, outside of just lecture or this exchange of student and professor in class. And so it's hard to say, well, just kind of go up to your professor, but that's really what you have to do. We are people, we are
Right.
humans. There's and so to me, as a professor, it's very important for me to be able to break that kind of like barrier that is
Mhm.
kind of like the culture of universities, right? Where like the professor is this person who is like, oh, there's a halo, but around
Tell
them.
me she doesn't like me. Can I just say,
Yes.
Stephanie, you just gave such a rich, rich gift to everyone, because that is the first time I've heard someone say, look at the professor catalog, look them up on LinkedIn. What associations are they doing? Do they have jobs outside? Like, that is such a really smart strategy on how to broaden your network and how to open those doors through
Mhm.
your professors. And office hours are mandatory. You're getting paid for office hours, so go ahead, you're paying for it, right? Like, go pay
Yeah,
for your education and maximize and benefit from it. Thank you for sharing
absolutely.
that. You just opened my mind. I was just looking at programs. I wasn't looking at the professors at all, but that is
Mhm.
such a great segue into it. That's fantastic. So thank you. My next question really is, you have such an amazing, you sent me your resume. You have a rich education. You got your PhD, which is huge. Not a lot of people end up, in that position. What drove your hunger to keep learning and to really become this amazing professor across a plethora of campuses? I'm seeing your like over dozens of classes that you've taught. What does that drive? How do you avoid burnout?
Well, the answer to your question is just my passion, right? My passion for learning, my passion for being able to really equip myself with all of the tools that I can to be a better professor, a better academic, a better researcher, a better community leader. Because within my work in obtaining my master's degree and my doctorate, I did work formally in the Central American organizations that I've mentioned, that are the historical Central American organizations in Los Angeles that were founded as a response to the refugee crisis in Central America. So El Rescate and Clinica Romero, an FQHC, one of the largest FQHCs here in Los Angeles, that was founded by Central Americans for Central Americans. These are the spaces that then gave me not only a job while I was,
Mhm.
going to school, but also gave me all of the leadership opportunities that continues to be very important in my work, which is always bridging academia with community work and community work with academia. And so, um, as I finished my master's, I just knew. I knew I had to obtain my doctorate. I knew I wanted to be able to hone in on a doctorate that would be able to again uh, enrich, continue to enrich this unique experience I had as a leader, right?
Mhm.
From the Western perspective of leadership, which is in an organization, but also give value to the community work that I had done, have done and have done in the past and continue to do, which is the grassroots work, the unofficial work.
Right.
And so I knew that the doctoral program at USC, Go Trojans, uh, was perfect for me. And this is an educational doctorate in organizational change and leadership. And so I knew that that was the program for me. I knew that I wanted to be able to fortify my experience, and I knew that it was important also as a Latina, as a Salvadoreña, as a community leader, for me to be an example for others and say, yes, I came from Pico-Union, Westlake. Yes, my mother was a single mother. Yes, I dealt with a lot of challenges in college with being able to complete my degree, from not being able to pay, to
Yeah.
having to work multiple jobs, to experiencing homelessness and also food insecurity. That, yeah, it can be done. It's not easy,
Right.
it's not perfect, but you can do it. And so it just fell in my heart that I wanted to be a doctora, not a medical doctora, but a doctor and an expert in my field. And so that's how that happened. And I utilized my technique, which is I looked at programs and say, let me look at the faculty, let
Yeah.
me see what they're about. And I knew that USC would be my home for that. It was actually the only place that I applied, which is insane, right? I don't recommend that. But I got in, and then a few years later, I was able to complete successfully the program and my dissertation while
That's amazing.
working at Clinica
That's really
Romero. Yeah, while working at Clinica Romero and Cal State
so.
Northridge as a
Then
lecturer.
let's kind of dive into that. So where you are today, and we'll get into a little more career stuff in a bit. But where you
Yeah.
are today, what do you think mattered most? Your education, your experience, or your network, or was it a combination of the three?
It's a combination, but I also believe and a lot on your ability to be able to push yourself. There's no one else in the world that can motivate you, that can push you more than yourself. And I truly
Mhm.
believe that. And in the absence of motivation, sometimes you're going to be tired. Sometimes you're not going to have time. Life happens, whether you want it or not, whether you're working or completing a degree. But when there's a lack of motivation, then the discipline comes in, right? That
Yeah.
disciplined mentality of, I'm going to do it, I'm going to finish it, and just seeing, setting your mind on the price. And I think my mentality came from a lot of the sports that I did in K through 12, where wonderful coaches gave me these other skills of being able to think about, okay, how to be a team player, but also
Mhm.
how to be your own biggest cheerleader. And so
Right.
that definitely, as a student, as a leader, working at a community health center during the COVID-19 pandemic, while doing my doctorate, that is
Wow.
probably one of the hardest things I've done in my life. And something's got to give, right? In terms of
Mhm.
like the burnout, and I quickly understood that that would be my health. My health took a toll.
Wow. How did you recoup? Or is that sometimes, let's be honest, you have to just push forward. You know it's going to be a difficult time, and then it's like, well, it's just I have to just suck it up for a year. Sometimes
I'm not sure what happened, but I can't hear you.
there we go. Okay, sorry.
No,
So
no worries.
right, it's the mic. So for you, sometimes burnout is something you just have to do, right? Like you identified, okay, you know what, right now my health is going to take a toll, but it's only for a year. It's just 6 months. I'm almost done with the program. You have to just drive forward. And that's the reality. And a lot of people might think, no, this is too much. Like, you kind of have to suck it up. What did Kim K say? Sometimes people don't want to work. Well, sometimes you just have to work and do it, and then it'll be over, right? And then it's like a little rainbow at the end. How did you navigate that? Was it a short-term health issue or just burnout and you knew it? Or did you take a step back and say, okay, let me find a place to find some relief?
It was kind. It's funny because now that I think about it, I hadn't think about it like that during my as I was finishing my doctorate. I at the same time was had realized how bad my health had gotten. I was just physically worn out, um, overworked. My mental health was not doing well. And so, as I'm culminating this, part of an important part of my life, which is, graduating, successfully defending my dissertation, I decided I need to get my health in check. I need to get my health as a priority because here I am, right, in my, going up in my educational and professional career, and my health is just going down. And I said,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I have to take care of this. And so as I'm graduating, I'm like really taking the time to reflect. And I think reflection and introspection is so important,
Mhm.
um, to talk to yourself and say, okay, why am I feeling like this? What is it that is, uh, propelling or, making my situation worse, better, etc. And so, um, as I'm graduating, as I'm preparing for, this culmination, this, the end of this journey, I started taking care of myself, and that was just, self care, eating healthy, being active, and ever since then, I graduated in 2021, yes, ooh, no, 2021, 2021, which is 5 years ago. I really turned my health around, but it was just me being gentle with myself and me being
Yeah.
able to be like, es ahora, it's today, or I'm just not, gonna take this seriously. And so, that was the best gift I could give myself after graduating, which
Love
is,
that.
okay, girl, now take care of yourself. Like, let's be real. You're not
Yeah.
gonna be a doctora of nothing
Right.
if you don't take care of yourself. So, I definitely felt like as I graduated, my burnout was
You're
just
done. Yeah.
I
Your
was
your
done.
brain and your body led you to it, and then you had to self-assess. So that's great to hear. And sometimes that's the reality, right? Where you just suck it up and then get to it and then take care of yourself, right? So one thing I really wanted to highlight is, you've built your career that bridges academia and real world public policy. Was that intentional, or did it happen naturally as you were, one of the leading advocates for Central Americans or for Salvadorians, right?
Mhm. I think that the work calls for it. The work in the nonprofit sector, in the social justice sector, calls upon you, demands of you to become an advocate, to do advocacy,
Mhm.
and in doing advocacy, being able to meet with different leaders, create coalitions with other organizations that find that, not only have social justice as as a framework and as a value, but that are trying to create the same changes that you know want to see,
Mm.
because we're all fighting for a more equitable tomorrow for our communities, and so policy is part of that, right? And so being able to uh, be able to create, support, critique, and be at the front lines with legislators and other community organizations and institutions who are, moving the needle in terms of where policy is going locally, statewide, and nationally. It's just you can't do social justice without kind of becoming involved in policy work, and it was a great experience. And in doing that type of work, I was able to refrain my idea of networking, because I think a lot of
Mm.
times we think about just the traditional networking, which is like, okay, I'm going to meet folks that, are connected to either ideas, institutions, spaces that I want to be part of, that I want to be, what have you. And in doing policy work, I really realized that organic relationships matter in terms of being able to organically have relationships with other organizations and their leaders, organically have relationships of care with people in these kind of key places, that were just outside of an exchange. And of course, like I mentioned, in terms of like identifying a mentor that wants to mentor you back, these are the relationships of people who want to have a relationship that is genuine as well. And so I learned quickly that I wanted to touch base with folks that I was working with in local elected offices or institutions, and just grab coffee and get to talk about stuff outside of just work. And yes, it always comes in, right? But first be like, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? How's your family?
Yeah.
A lot of these individuals were Latinos themselves. So we're all first gen professionals, first gen, higher education, higher educated students. And so there was so much connection there, and I think that made my relationships with folks so much more uh, just real, and not just based on an exchange. And so um, I learned that from policy work.
I love that. And sort of what made you choose to teach at multiple institutions instead of pursuing a traditional university tenure track route? I know when we connected, you said it's so important to have the community members, the youth, see a reflection of themselves. And that was something that you were so proud of. You said, I love it when my students, say, I'm looking at you, I see me. Is
Mhm.
that one of the reasons why you like teaching at multiple institutions? Talk a little bit about
No. So no, the first answer is no, and then it's kind of like yes. So
that. Okay.
no, because academia is a very hard, I would say, space to get into. Full-time positions are not, don't come by very often.
Mm,
And if they do, it's very competitive, right? You're
okay.
competing against many other lecturers or part-time faculty who are looking to get a full-time. And so a lot of lecturers, like I was in the past, like myself, become known as freeway flyers,
Okay.
because you're literally flying through
Oh,
freeways going
freeway
from,
flyers. I'm like, I've
yeah,
never heard of the term. What is that?
yeah,
Okay. Oh,
like you're literally going from one institution to another, because you're trying to, within the classes, maybe you have one here and two over here. A full-time load is usually about 5 courses.
mhm.
And so when you're a part timer, you are not given a full time load. And so a lot of lecturers then have to, do the hustle and be able
Right.
to teach at different institutions to kind of have a more, a more steady or, uh, I would say viable income, because unfortunately, as a part timer, you don't have all the benefits and, time to, especially if you're going to like a research university to do research and so on. And so it took me 10 years for me to land a full-time tenure track professor
Wow, 10
role.
years? Wait,
10
hold on.
year.
Hold on. How did you not lose your stamina, right? Because a lot of people, don't want to they want instant gratification. Oh my gosh. Does it really take 10 years? Like what talk a little bit about that.
It's definitely not something that you will obtain right away. You can teach in higher education institutions with a master's, again, depending on your specialization and what these departments are looking for. But for you to land a full time, you have to have experience teaching.
Yeah.
A lot of universities, require you to have a few years of experience specifically to their type of institution. So whether it's a UC or a CSU, they want you to have community college experience. And so um, you have to be able to kind of, make sure, at least in my case, I was like, I want to cover my bases. I want to be, make sure that I am exposing myself to these different institutions, not only because I knew that that would become important, but also because of my love for learning. I'm like, well, I want to know, how I can, make sure that I brush my, I freshen up my skills and understand that teaching at a community college requires different set of, added skills, or just, it's a different environment than, teaching students who, went straight to a CSU. And so that is why the first reason why I was at so many different institutions was because I just had to. And then two, because I'm an overachiever and I just want to, make sure that I learn all the different types of professor, I would say, opportunities that there is. So I did, like, I did dual enrollment. So I taught at different K through 12 schools who had MOUs or understandings with the community colleges that I worked with. And so I have taught college courses at traditional high schools, charter schools, continuation schools. I've taught college courses to students in middle school, to other grades. And so it's been such an enriching process, because
Wow.
teaching at a community college, I'm a tenure track at Orange Coast College, which is one of the largest community colleges in Orange County. It's situated in Costa Mesa.
Mhm.
Uh, we have students from all different experiences, right?
Yeah.
That are coming back for, to go to a 4 year, that are coming back because they had a family and they decided to stop community college because they want to have another degree, or they've changed their
Right.
path.
Mhm.
And so being able to teach at the community level, being able to teach at a CSU and at different spaces within the community college space, really better equipped me to be a much more,
Competitive candidate when that position comes. So let me stop you because
well, and also a better professor. Most
yeah,
importantly,
it's
yeah.
great. Yeah, being well-rounded and understanding the diversity that comes with having a class is amazing.
Yeah.
It really speaks to your value and who you are and your integrity, right? So there's a hustle in all career paths, and education is just like any other corporate climb to some extent, right? And it might not be a conventional pathway because, to your point, you have to get the experience. So start lecture. Like, what advice would you be with what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a professor but they don't have a place to start? What would be the first step they take?
So besides being able to identify a professor who is a mentor and who, again, whose specialization you are, that you have a connection with, that is first of all key. And then second of all, there's a lot of mentorship programs that are not so well known about, that are identifying individuals who want to become professors. For example, the LA Community College District has this program called Project Match, and so it takes you through this process of mentorship to prepare the next professors. And so I would say look out for those opportunities. And also, as you advance your degree, there's also, doctoral programs of mentorship, and being able to, again, have mentors as you're doing your doctorate. That's a great opportunity for you to become prepared with not only the skills, but the network for what institution you want to teach in potentially. And so again, because of my mentors, back when I was an undergrad, believing in me and identifying that early on that they wanted to support my journey, and they were the ones that gave me the opportunity to teach at Cal State Northridge. So shout out to the Central American Studies Department at Northridge, because not only did I come back with a Central American Studies degree, right, a Latin American Studies degree, and then eventually also earned my doctorate. And so not only did I have the qualifications, but most importantly, I also did a lot of community and have done a lot of community work since then with the Central American community and the Central American organizations, which is key for that department, right? So you have to be able to align your values, right, your research, and the leadership that you want to model yourself after, i.e., the mentor or the person that you think will support you through that journey. So it's not something that you do alone by any chance. It's something that you do in community. Que haces en comunidad, and that comunidad starts with your family, even if they don't know what it takes.
Right.
That support, that cheering on, is what I think inspires a lot of us. And
well, hold on. As a first gen, I think that's so important to identify. Sometimes your family isn't going to get it. They're not going to know what your titles are. They don't even know what you do. My mom still doesn't know what I do, right? So it's okay to acknowledge that as long as you know your plan. And I think you just really laid it out in a very smart way. And to kind of segue into that, was there something you had to sacrifice to build your career? Because it sounds like you were hustling and grinding until you got to where you wanted to be. And sometimes that does mean sacrificing weekends or hanging out with your friends. Can you talk to us about the sacrifices you made to get to your career?
Yeah, definitely. The social aspect was something that I sacrificed, and in the social aspect, I also include my family as number one, especially with my doctorate. During those years, I literally would calendar my family for Saturday evenings, because that was the only time that I gave myself as a self-care. Don't do anything, don't worry about school, don't worry about work. And I told my friends, hey guys, until further notice, I will not be attending any parties, going out. I'm sorry. Maybe it was a special occasion, I may join. I said, but I'm not going to just go out, because I couldn't. It was like I was writing all day over the weekends for my dissertation, right? Or doing schoolwork on the Friday nights during between the work week, also taking classes. And so definitely that is something that I had to sacrifice. And again, this was partially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and so I remember just feeling so bad, right? Because there were so many limited opportunities to see each other because of,
Right.
precautions and all of that, that I felt like I really missed years of time with my family. And so that definitely is something that was an intentional sacrifice. I don't know if that even makes sense, but I knew that I also made intentional time for my family where they were my priority. Saturday evenings, do you want to hang out? Let's go have dinner. Something,
Mhm.
where I knew that I would still be able to come back home and be able to take care of myself by just disengaging. Because Sunday I would write from the morning till night, right? I
Wow.
had to make sure that I did that because Monday through Friday I was mostly dealing with, being a professor and also my community work as a director of public policy and community affairs. So it's people always ask me, how did you do it, or how,
Mhm.
and I always say it comes to a cost of something. Something's gonna give.
Right.
Um and besides my health, I know family was one of those things, and I don't take that lightly because I always say family is first, right? Two
Right.
things: health is wealth, and family is first. So I definitely, you know, I that was something that just I had to do, and
Thank you for
um,
sharing that.
yeah.
It's important. I mean, sometimes, yes, you have to make the sacrifice if you're trying to build something. I know you also built an association, right? Lead LA, right? And you're a
Mhm.
part of other organizations. It takes time, dedication, discipline. How do you stay structured? Do you have any tools? Do you live off of your Google Calendar? Like, how do you stay focused? What programs do you use? What programs do you recommend? Or what best habits do you recommend for people who are looking to build themselves, right?
That's a great question. I think all of us operate in such unique ways, but I think that there is one central theme that I always come back to, which is the usage of my time.
Mm.
And there is no extra time. You
So you're
make
not on
the
social media doom scrolling?
that's another conversation.
Right.
But uh the idea is that you're going to make the time for the things that you want to do. You're going to be able to schedule yourself in a way that you make time to, get that workout in, to, go to do your nails and hair as a part of your own self care, to be able to take that time off. Take time off, people. Please take your PTO. Please, 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 please. It's very necessary. And so I acknowledge that that comes with, as a part of my privilege of someone that is, you know, educated, has a great support team, my family. So I recognize that's a privilege. But I would say, again, don't, make the time. There's no extra time. And if you want to do it, you're going to be able to have time for this, that,
Mm.
you invest, you're investing your time, right? Your time is like in a bank, and you decide where you take it, where you put it, and then that, then that creates something for you, whether it's that sense of community, that self-care, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be, you know, anything that's perfect. There was a point where took up bird watching. I just was like, you know what? Like, I want to do something different, and it
Yeah.
doesn't want. I don't want to work out. I just want to disconnect and be in nature. And I think it comes out of, I forget what it's called. It's like the Natural something conservancy, and they do bird watches every weekend or every so often, and it was nice. Got my binoculars. They had binoculars for just to borrow, and I made time for that, and it was in about 2 hours on a Saturday morning, and I found another way to do something for myself.
Yeah.
Um, and just acknowledging that also you can do it all in terms of like, and I say that in terms of like, not that you cannot not do various things, but that in your passion of the work that you want to do, you really want to hone in on like, okay, what's your passion and what's your career? And then what are your hobbies, right? Like what are the
Mm,
things that make you happy that you want to do on the side? And for me, as you mentioned, Latinos, um, for equity through advancing democracy, LA lead, um, I founded that, and with a few friends, to be able to recognize that we want to see more Latinos in office. There's so many of us in the nation, and there's not enough of us representing us in a way that I believe is not only supporting democracy, but also supporting an equitable, uh, an equitable society where everyone has not only what they need, but that we're creating the policy, we're creating the institutions to support that. And so that is my passion, and that's why we need to be able to also create different spaces where we see the future leaders of tomorrow. So it's not only in the classroom where I
mhm.
see that, but I also see in leading our nation, because let's be real, these past years, it's not it has been bipartisan. A lot of the things that have happened, it's not
Mhm.
one side or the other. It's been both who are for voting for things that are just not contributing to a healthier society, to more educated society. We're actually
Right.
there's a lot of challenges. But what I want to say about that is that we need Latinos with conviction that are going to lead, not only in terms of, como dice mi mamá, de la boca para afuera, de las palabras
Mm,
para afuera,
mm,
not just in words, but in actions. And so
right.
we need leaders, Latino leaders, who can represent us and who will not bend to to the pressure from, whether it's DC, Washington DC, or other outside external pressures, to not have the American people as, and I mean this, regardless of status,
Mhm.
regardless of background, who are not going to place our communities as the first place where we invest, where we support, and we enrich the experience of all. So,
No, thank you. It's so important to really highlight the work you're doing and how you're supporting the community. So you're such an amazing educator that has various schedules across campuses, across LA, right? And the OC. And you're a part of so many great professional associations and networks. Could you share this will be a two questioner. So could you share one how you balance your time, right? I think it's just, I think I've seen like over 2 dozen organizations and committees that you sit on, right? So clearly you know how to schedule yourself and you're being attentive. Talk to us a little bit about how you choose an association for yourself, whether it's to help progress forward social impact, whether it's to develop your professional network, and then also give guidance of how important it is to not just join associations, but to be attentive. I think it's easy to say, yeah, I'm a member, but you're not actually in the mission of the work that that organization is doing. And you can answer at whatever order you'd like.
yeah, that's a great question. So, going back to these organic relationships, you definitely, networking, the associations that you're part of also have to match not only either professional aspirations that you have, but have to be part of your core values, right?
Mhm.
So as you're researching these associations or groups that you may want to join, again, I invite you to do research, right? What are their values? Who is their leadership? That means matters a lot. Again, in terms of like, well, what things, what ideas, what people, what institutions are you potentially going to be exposed to? Also, what is the work that they've done? What is the trajectory? And so when these three areas align for you, I would say join that organization. Or if you feel like, there's a perspective or something new that you offer to that institution or association, that should be a reason why you join. And so one of the associations that I'm a part of is the Southern California Association of Latin American Studies. And this association wants to, like the Latin American Studies Association that's international, really hone in on Southern California and Southern California educators who are in Latin American studies or any field that relates to Central, South, and Mexico, Central America, South America, and Mexico and the Caribbean. And so we hosted a couple of conferences in different schools, and it was just such a great turnout of educators in history and geography, all who were specializing in Latin American studies in Southern California. And so being able to create these spaces and in just cross collaboration, because that's when people come up to me or others and like, hey, you're doing this type of work, let's work together. That is what I enjoy. And another association that I'm a part of is, also the Central American Studies section of the International Latin American Studies Association. And I joined that because I want to be able to support Central American studies, not only, within different academic spaces, but also in the research, in the way that we think about Central American studies, in the way that it is evolving. And so that is a passion where I want to contribute, right? Where I feel that my expertise in Central American studies, because again, not a lot of people have a major in Central American studies. They might, they do their work in Central America or on the Central American community, but there is not a lot of trained, I would say, professors in Central American studies as I am and some of my peers. And so I want to bring that transnational perspective, and support the evolution of the field, just like all other fields are constantly changing and evolutionizing. And so I would say that associations, again, outside of networking, can support your professional, your your even serve as a part of educational purposes, right? You're learning different values and also skills in these organizations. So I don't join anything just to join it. I join it because it is something that is connected to my values, and that's very important.
You join with intention, and it's so important. And to really connect your work and personal life, let's talk about work-life balance, right? So it's amazing. You're doing so much for the community, and that might be your fun, right? So maybe that is your personal balance, right? But how do you maintain a work-life balance and, no one to say no to certain events, no one to check in with yourself, have a cozy night in, or, really massage that social battery and hang out with your friends, right? So what is your work-life balance, and how do you navigate that? What advice do you have people to help maintain that?
So for work-life balance, it might not always look like a traditional, okay, well, you have weekends off, or, it's again about knowing that you are the owner of your time, right? And you decide when and how you do things to a certain extent. And so for me, work-life balance means that my students know that after Friday, 5 p.m., I am not answering any emails, right? I am D&D till Monday, so that is part of my policy. I will, reply to you on Monday. If it's not a holiday, then I will, if it's a holiday, I will be replying to you on Tuesday. Yeah. And so that is one way that I have a boundary with work, right? And that also means that on the weekends, then I utilize that time for the things that I love to do. It's with is which is spend time with my family, maybe take a short trip. Definitely a lot of self care. I would say I indulge in a lot of self care, whether it's a massage or, beauty, for my nails to what have you.
Mhm.
And also, it's okay not to do anything. And that's something I've learned with the years. It's okay to just be home or, wherever space, whatever space it is that you choose to not do anything. Absolutely doing nothing is also part of self-care. And I guess, and I realize that that's a privilege that I have because I also am, currently not married or have children. And so I know that that will look very different for me in the future when I am married and I do have children. And so, however that can look like for you, and that you have a support network, either your partner or family, or that you can create that support for yourself in whatever way that, may look like, do it. And I acknowledge that that is a privilege that we have as
Right.
professionals, that we're able to either pay for that or be able to create that with, our family and loved ones.
Can we talk about that for 2 seconds? Because I also don't have children and we're Latinas, and there used to be such a stigma around, oh, you don't have a kid, you're not married, you're marinovio, like, can you talk to me about how you've navigated that cultural, I mean, if you were judged, if you weren't judged, and it's nice to meet other Latinas who are in that similar plank and we're still progressing forward and you're choosing the career. It's not common, but we are shifting as a culture. Talk to me about that. Have you experienced it?
Oh, definitely. It's been so many years of y el novio, and oh, when are you gonna get
Mm-hmm.
married, and what about the children? Um, you know, I always feel I always felt uncomfortable answering that question, because it was almost like, even though I am or have been successful in my career and in my educational journey, it was almost like, but you haven't done this, right? Which is an important part of, Latino culture, in terms of being able to, you know have your own family, and be able to,
Mm-hmm.
you know be able to add to family by having family. And
Right.
so I almost felt like I had failed. Like it didn't matter that I had attained all these other things, because it was somewhat always going back to, well, what about your boyfriend, or what about this, or what about that? And so I think my answer now has changed, because before I'd be like, oh no, like, I don't have one right now, but I'm looking. And so I would always turn into responding to what I was doing
Yeah.
in the absence of not having those things. And now my response is just, it's actually much shorter, and just saying, I'm happy. I'm single and I'm happy. And that's it. End of story.
Yeah.
A period is also, a
Somewhere
sentence.
in there, right.
Yeah, a period is also a sentence, meaning, yeah, I'm happy, period. And
Yeah.
um I think that that has shifted the way that I even see myself, because, again, for a long time, I still felt kind of like, well, I've done all these things, but I haven't gotten married, and so I must be a failure. But just like other things, I do, want children, um, and so, you know, as time goes, I'm just preparing to be a different type of, mother, as time goes by, just like someone who goes to, back to college, later on in life, prepares to be a different type of student, right? And
Right.
so, again, going back to like that perfect timing or perfect um, kind of pressure to have children, that was something that I would only feel in like social gatherings, But now I'm just very happy saying, hey, I'm happy. Let's move on. You know what I have done, and I just talk about other things. You know where I did go? I went
Yeah.
to Puerto Rico. You know what I did do? I did this in the
Right.
absence of children.
And I think that's like a conversation sometimes that you can have with your family, your parents, and they still won't understand, right? Where it's like, hey, where are the children? I'm like, hey, you know what? So I'm from South Central, born and
Mhm.
raised, super proud. And my parents, like yours, wanted better for us, but they don't understand. They're like, oh, well, just have a kid. It's okay. You'll figure it out. Like, no, like sometimes not having a child helps your career. Sometimes wanting to choose the right partner is going to help your career and who you are as a person. And the conversation that I've had with my mom or my family like many times is, you want a life that makes you happy, and these are the choices that are going to help me get to the life that I want. And if it is improvement, you came to this country and now I'm here, I'm thriving, and I'm very successful. This is how I'm becoming the success that I am and that I'm working towards. And it's okay. And we're not at the rancho. I'm not going to have a baby. You should have let me have a baby in high school then, right? Like, it's just not the case. But I love hearing that. I think, peer to peer, we're not judging each other, but our tios and tias, there is a bit of that, right? So it's fantastic to hear, like, hey, I'm happy, I'm good, I'm great, don't worry about it. I hope you're happy, right? And it's as easy as that when you're talking to someone that's being judgmental. Um, it's interesting to also sort of hear, you have really great boundaries, right, with your family and friends. Have you ever had a difficult work experience where you're having challenges, whether it's the corporate climb or just the work environment is not healthy? How do you have you had that experience? And then what recommendation do you give to people that aren't in a healthy work environment? When do you know it's time to go? How do you know when to leave? How do you plan your exit?
Those are great questions. I personally will be very vocal about my boundaries, as hard as that can be. And again, because as a Latina, our parents have inculcated us just strong work ethic. Like, you have to be on time, you have to go to work, you can't miss work, you can't you shouldn't be calling out, like that's not good. And just having like this obedient mindset. And so
Yes.
part of learning is also unlearning, right? Unlearning kind of that cultural work ethic that we've learned from our parents, where it's like your job above everything. And so being able to unlearn and then learn that there are protections, right? There are labor
We
protections.
have rights, right?
Yeah, we have rights. We do have PTO. We do have time. We should take your time, your break times, right? And also that there's a work life balance, right? Depending on your role, that you can have and you may have, and that really has to be worked out with, again, your role, the situation. That there will be times, as a professional, especially as you get into management or upper management, that you'll have to take the late night calls, that you'll have to this. But there also has to be a way where you prep your team in a way that sometimes it doesn't always have to come to the boss, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes things can be settled at the management, at the manager level or the coordinator level. But that comes with you being able to be a leader or a boss that prepares your team for those type of situations where you're not always the person that people are going to, because they can handle it at, I would say, at the staff level, etc. So I think a lot of, at least for me, a lot of the part of being able to have that work-life balance is also the work that you do at work with preparing your team to also be able to respond to things that maybe you don't have to get a call at 10 p.m. or etc. And that with your own boss or your own leader, that you're able to set okay, can you hear my parents? I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh god, it's like my foster, my cat, my Bailey. That you're able to create that environment for yourself where, hey, I'm going to dinner with family, or hey, can't take this call, is it an emergency, and just kind of being able to have those very I would say honest conversations, because I had a boss who told me, you have to be available 24/7, like you are on salary and that means that you work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, it doesn't. So being, that is kind of goes against so many things in Latino culture, even, from a gender perspective, from a cultural perspective. And so being able to feel comfortable in advocating for yourself, which, can be hard, I think is a big part of that. Not
No,
being
thank
afraid to
you.
speak.
Thank you for sharing that. And, when you talk about culture, I listen to you, and I'm also hearing my parents too, where it's like, oh, you shouldn't go out on a Thursday night. You have work tomorrow, right? It's like, well, hold on, that's all right. So it really does, if you're hearing that from your family, and, there's multi-generational households. So you're going to hear different things from different people or different judgments, just really sitting in your boundary. I love that. I think boundaries are so important, and I can practice that a little bit more. So I like to ask a fun question, right? So, we're all human. Emotional intelligence is a buzzword in a real world problem, right? Or a tool. So could you share, we've all gone through breakups, you get your period, menopause, you get a divorce, or, what, you're depressed, right? Could you share how you navigate your personal life and how you balance that when you still have to clock in at 9 a.m.? Do you have any examples or just any guidance to people on how you navigate that emotional intelligence?
Life will happen, and you just have to feel, right? Whether it's a breakup, whether it's disappointment. I Throughout the years, I have been able to perfect that a little bit more in terms of like, okay, sit with my feelings, right?
Yeah.
Really understand what they're coming from. And those kind of tools I've, I'll be honest, have come from therapy, from taking care of my mental health as a way to get the tools that I need to make sure that I am tuning in with myself, that I understand why I'm feeling like I'm feeling sometimes. And so whether it's a breakup, whether it's work, kind of taking that time to be like, okay, why am I feeling like this? Okay, I'm acknowledging these feelings. I'm not just trying to bury them somewhere. Feel them, feel them, feel them, feel them. As much as you feel the joy, you also, have to recognize, the pain, or sometimes just again, if you're disappointed or what have you. And then I reward myself with something. And that could be anything. That could be retail therapy. That could be like, hey, I want to go get cafecito with a friend, and not necessarily talk about whatever's going on in my mind, but maybe I just, want to go out dancing. Just get myself to continue to live in whatever way that I want to do that. And that could look very different from, booking a trip and saying, hey, I want to look forward to, this summer trip. And, now I want to go work out. And now I'm thinking about like, my summer bod. Or I think that bringing joy to yourself is something that looks very different for each of us. Find it, do it, in a way that is accessible to you, and then you can do it. And don't feel about it. Don't ever feel bad about doing something for yourself.
No, that's perfect. And how, you're a woman, you're in your career, and this is conversations I have with other girlfriends. Like, how do you make friends at, the age that you're at or in the industry that you're in? Like, do you just stay with your same circle or are you open to new friendships?
I'm definitely open to new friendships. I consider myself a introvert, extrovert. Like, for example, when I met you, I was
Yeah.
just like chatting away, but
Yeah.
sometimes inside I'm like super, super like timid, and so that usually just is like my way of dealing with my anxiety. So I just talk to everyone.
Mhm.
And but in all of that experience, I always meet people like yourself who inspire me, who I want to learn from, and vice versa. I think that you should always see if there's friends, right, that come from any of the spaces that you're in, whether it's the associations or your social settings or work. I think that there's so something so wonderful, especially making friends with other Latinas, so you can share share the
Right.
traumas,
Yeah.
share share the tips, share the insight. um Part of the reason why I'm so passionate about education is because education can take place anywhere. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be in the institution, in the classroom. It could take place at a meeting. It could take place with an exchange of friends. And I so much am that person that will share what I know, if it will help you. And I believe strongly in women, especially Latina women, empowering each other, because it's important for us as we go through that door, right, that next door, that we're pulling someone right behind us and not shutting that door, but keeping that door open for someone else, who's going to be a great leader. And so I believe in mentorship. I believe in friendships. I believe in it, sisterhood, hermandad, la hermandad entre mujeres, entre Latinas. And so, yes, I will make friends with anyone, anywhere, as long as I think, like, as long as we have shared values, and
Yeah.
and we see that there's again this organic relationship that will come from that. And so in meeting you, we connected on so many levels, from CSUN to Cal State LA, to being Latinas in leadership,
Yeah.
and just all of those things. And so I just hope that people will just be open.
Oh, what's so beautiful is you're right. We're climbing the ladder, right? We're trying to get to our goal, but we're not removing the ladder. We're keeping it there and adding to it, which is so important when you're meeting Latina leaders. Be the leader who will get like, hey, how did you get there? Here, this is exactly how I got here. This is my roadmap. This is exactly why I started this podcast too, because you hear leaders at the top, they get interviewed, but everyone has had a journey. Let's share the journey. Let's share the tidbits and the tips and tricks to let other people come with us. But it's interesting as you climb up and you're sometimes one of the only minorities on campus or at a company or in a leadership position. Sometimes you get people who are jealous, who hate a little bit. I don't even like using the word hater, but it is real. Like, have you experienced that? What tips do you have? Have you ever been attacked or, like been a part of something where, I think perception is so dangerous sometimes and it brings out the worst in people. Like, what advice do you have for people who might be struggling with a hater or two, or just navigating that? Like, how do you protect yourself outside of getting an evil eye necklace, right? Or doing a limpia, right? Like, how do you protect yourself?
um I will say that as much as you have people who want to learn from you and or want to support you, there's going to be people that you know, dislike you, don't like you, don't, for whatever reason, or don't support you, I would say get away from their way, right?
Mhm.
However, that can be done professionally, physically, etc. And focus on those that do want better for you, and for
Right.
those and the people that you do want to do better for too, as a mentor or what have you. I have not always received the support that or the mentorship that I believe that I would get specifically from other Latina women, which was
Mhm.
also disheartening. But then I went back to my rule, right? Like, not everyone wants to be a mentor, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that kind of, like, again, centers me and be like, okay, that person doesn't want to be a mentor, or that person doesn't want to do an exchange of ideas or of her roadmap or their roadmap, and that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
You just remove yourself from that person, and you rebuke that energy, that negatividad, by, again, not being in the space, not exchanging, because energy, is real. Like, I feel like I want to be in the company of people who wish me well, and I'm going to wish well upon them.
Right.
And so, it's not worth it, right? Even if you think this person, that's why I said earlier, right? Like, even though maybe someone checks out in terms of, like, their experience, but for whatever reason, whether it's personal or professional, whatever, they can meet, you know, your need of them and them of you, vice versa. Go where you're wanted, go
Right.
where you are appreciated, and that goes back to work, right? And you asked me this question earlier about, like, when do you know when to move on? And I think for both, in, like, answering your question about mentorship and haterade and all that, uh you have to move on from not only where you're not wanted and appreciated, but you also need to move on. As part of leadership for me is that you need to move on to, the next step, in order to also allow younger leaders or other folks who want to be in your role to step into those, right?
Right.
And so there comes a time where you're like, okay, if you know how to do your job con los ojos cerrados like this, and it's like no longer a challenge for you, or there's nothing more for you to expand, to create, to improve, then it's time for you to go. And it's time for you to grow as a leader in the next step, at the next level. And that could look very different for each leader. Sometimes it's taking on a higher leadership role.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's taking on a bigger, organization with a bigger budget. Sometimes that is, expanding your specialty in another area of the work that you've been doing. And so the area for growth is always bountiful. It's
Mhm.
when you realize, I've done everything I can, I don't have any growth, whether it's vertically or horizontally, that I can do in this organization or in this role. You know what? It's time for me to go. And also being able to say, someone else is going to come, and that's okay. Hopefully, another Latina as yourself, maybe, come, recruiting from within. That's
Mhm.
also very important, right? Did you mentor someone? Do you have staff already, like, that are going to take your role? And so I think that you'll know when to move on, both from someone who is hating,
Mhm.
and also from a job when you've done your
Yeah,
work.
and you know what? It's okay if your, cousin might be a little jealous, if your best friend of 20 years, has a little bit of envy. There's healthy envy, and then there's some that let's go ahead and cut that off, right? Like, it's just set those boundaries. It's very healthy, right?
It's funny that you say that, because I used to see, like, yeah, there's, like, healthy envy, but I've actually I also like to be intentional with my words, in terms of, like, how I'm putting out how I feel about others.
Mhm.
And I don't envy people. If I feel, or what I feel that really means for me, at least, is I'm inspired by someone. If
Yeah.
someone is in a greater role, has achieve all these things, that truly inspires me. And so I always have this growth mindset, I always have a learning mindset. And so what that signals to me is I can learn something from this person.
Yeah.
I can, I can be able to see their roadmap. I can be able to improve myself. And that is what I feel when I meet other Latinas like yourself, where
Mhm.
I'm like, what an inspiration. And if I don't have anything per se to learn from someone, that means that I have something to teach. That means that I have something to offer
Yeah.
that I can give to that person if they're like, at a different type of role or a different, area of their career that might be more entry or going back to masters, etc. Then that means that I feel like I have a responsibility to share my roadmap, to share
Right.
how I did it. And so whether it's learning or whether it's sharing and transferring knowledge, there's this relationship that can always happen that is positive. And so,
That's beautiful. You know what? That is beautiful and such a great outlook. I say it's beautiful and is, but you really shouldn't try, right? Like, you want to be nice to everyone, but at the same time, it's such a great positive, right? Your intentionality is on a positive outlook, and when you're able to, like you said, like, you know what, this girl inspires me, this woman inspires me, it's okay to have more than one mentor. Like it, when
Mhm.
you're trying to develop your skills and move up, and you look at oh, I met Stephanie, she's so articulate, she's so well read, I want to be like that. I want those positive traits, right? If you see these traits, and maybe you reach out to Stephanie and you say, hey, how did you become so articulate? Like start reaching out, finding mentors like, oh, she's a great public speaker. Let me go ahead and connect with her. Find the
Mhm.
things you want to improve, and, connect with the people and see how they can help you get to that level of skill set. So that's beautiful to hear. I love your positivity. That's fantastic.
uh, Thank you. Yeah, I really truly believe in that. I always believe that you can learn something from someone, and it's not something grandiose, right?
Mhm.
As like, oh, I'm going to learn how to write policy or what have you. It's like how you mentioned, maybe it's just like, yeah, you want to learn, what books this person read because you like their ideas and you like the way that they think, and maybe they have a great book that they can recommend, or etc. And so I continuously strive not for perfectionism, but for improving myself
Yeah.
as a person. And so I'm always looking for the opportunity of like introspection that leads to growth, but also growth within my community, which means I'm transferring knowledge, students,
Mhm.
community, and so I am inspired by others, and I hope to inspire people as well.
That's wonderful. Do you have any last remarks or guidance or any advice that you would have wanted early on, or just any words of wisdom?
Yes, there is no perfect journey. So no journey looks the same, feels the same, will be the same. What matters is that you do it. Si se puede, you can do it. Failure doesn't mean that you stop. Failure, or maybe things not going the way that you envisioned them, doesn't mean that you give up. It means that it's a learning opportunity. It means that you pivot. Rejection doesn't mean that you stop. It just means redirection, right? It means that you direct another way. And sometimes we often don't see that the way that things happen, often link to other blessings, other opportunities, other
Mhm.
doors that you never imagined. And you just have to trust that you are doing your work in a way that, it's going to serve you as a person, serve your family, serve your community, and that you always keep that open mind to change,
Mhm.
that you continue to motivate yourself, and to know when to also say no, and have that balance for yourself, and that at the end of the day, what I always feel like is important is that if our lives, are longer or shorter than others for many reasons, that when that day comes, that you're happy with what you're done. And if you're happy with what you're done with your life, then that's the best thing that you can take.
I love that. This is such a great conversation. And thank you for coming and sharing your story and your guidance and advice. Before we go, where can people follow you, connect with you? Have you written a book? What would you like to share with the public who might want to reach out to you?
I'm in the middle of writing a book, so it's based on ethnic studies, and it's based on the work that I did for my dissertation. But if you want to connect, please do so. I am, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name Stephanie Lemus, and I also am at Orange Coast College, so you can email me at S Lemus, my last name Lemus 11 at ccc.edu. I will love to connect with prospective students, anyone who has questions about my journey or anything else that I mentioned in this session. I am always happy to connect, and I'm always happy to be able to offer any insight or support that I can. So yeah, please connect.
Yeah, we might have to do an episode 2 on doom scrolling. So thank you all for tuning into Professionals on the Grind, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.